congratulations on the film. I've had a chance to sit down and watch it, and I loved it, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, Ruben, tell us a little bit about where the idea for this film first came to for you, because, of course, you wrote this film as well as directing it. So where did the idea first originate for you?
It came from when I went to visit my aunt in Florida. She had a neighbor who had just moved into her apartment, and she had found out that somebody had passed away in the apartment, and she started doing research on what had happened to the person. And what happened was the person had been murdered. And when I got more involved in it, I was like, oh, I can make a movie out of this and put a little more of a twist on it. So that's how the story came about.
Yeah, it's such a creepy thing to find out. We've just had a court case here in Australia over the last few years where a real estate agency got sued because they sold a house to a family and didn't tell them that it was the home of a famous serial killer here in Melbourne and that he killed his victims in that home. It's such a thing that you would expect would happen a lot because of how many murders there are. Was it something that you investigated when you went into this film to find out more about that kind of thing? What happens when people buy homes that someone has been murdered in?
Well, that was the whole kind of like what pushed the whole story, because I'm also into like true crimes, like the whole documentary stuff. I'm a big fan of those kind of like documentaries. And so when I learned about what was going on with this girl, I was like, I asked a few questions, and she said, yeah, there was some weird stuff happening around in the apartment and all that stuff like that. So I kind of like took my love of true crime and married it with that whole concept and kind of made what the film wound up becoming, where we kind of like interview the family and find out from the family's point of view what they thought was going on. And then you see her video blog of her kind of talking about what her experiences were in her house, and then you kind of get the whole story from that. But even though there's a twist to the story, because I wanted to kind of make it more like a true crimes with a supernatural twist to it.
Yep.
But then when you watch the movie, you realize that there's more to it, kind of. You find out that there's like, it also kind of touches upon mental illness a little bit and how some people take things to the extreme when they want to believe something so much that they'll go to a certain point where they shouldn't go. So without me kind of giving away the movie, that's how the movie kind of developed.
Yeah. And when did you make the decision of this being like almost a found footage kind of film? When did that decision get made? Was that very early on in the script writing process?
Well, that was a long time ago. I came up with the idea a long time ago, actually in 2010, around 2010 or 22, well, around there. And the whole concept originally was just to have the movie be strictly video blog,
yep,
where you would see her kind of talking to people on a video blog, kind of like the films, I don't know if you've heard the film Host and also Unfriended.
Yep.
I came up with this idea a long time ago, and I pitched it that way. I was like, hey, we could make a movie about just having people talking to a webcam, and a lot of people were like, that's not going to work. It's not a narrative kind of film, and it's not going to be kind of appreciated. Even though, like, years later, 2 films came out that actually were pretty successful, Unfriended and Host, which kind of did the same thing.
Yep.
So being that people were, like, resistant to that, that's where I added the true crimes aspect to it, where I wanted to kind of, like, interview people and make it more of a documentary with the found footage aspect of it, kind of like marrying those two things together.
You've made a lot of films over the years. What kind of challenges did you find using that kind of documentary and found footage style? Was there any challenges that you found that you didn't expect to find as a filmmaker?
No, I mean, it was because my mentor was a documentarian, so I learned pretty much how to go about making documentaries, and I also kind of like, one of my friends also worked on reality shows, so they work more on a scripted kind of documentary. So I kind of married that concept and when we went into interviewing the actors who were basically playing the family, it was more carried out like a documentary where they had an idea of what we were going to ask them, but we actually went into it like we would ask them constant all these different questions, so they had to kind of like be on their toes to answer this, and it kind of helped develop their characters more. So that's where you get, if you watch the movie, it's a little more rough with the interviews, because it's not like these people had a script that they were going off of. It was more like we would ask them all these different questions, and they had to kind of develop the connection with the character, and so that's how it went about.
And I know most of the actors that I've worked with over the years, they would absolutely love that challenge, because that's very much like improv, which a lot of actors do in their training. Was it something that they really enjoyed to do?
Yeah, they did. It's like, in fact, it's like we got so much footage because it became at the end, once we finished it, they enjoyed it. They came to me and they were like, "Oh, this is great. Can I get some of the footage?" Because with each actor, we actually shot probably like over an hour of footage with them.
Yep.
So when we actually went into post with this movie, it wound up being pretty long. It was over like close to 3 hours long because of all the content we had.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of cut it down by half to make it more kind of like palatable for people to view it. Because this was pre-Netflix, when you could do like episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. This was more, we wanted to do something that somebody could just watch really quickly. Even though we have so much content with this film, we wanted to cut it down. But I mean, for the actors, they appreciated it. They liked it because it was kind of a challenge. Yeah, it was like they actually became these people and kind of have to experience all this stuff and also connect with each other to become like a real family kind of on screen.
Yep.
Versus like having a script where they just had these lines that they had to regurgitate. And the way we shot it was more like you had to kind of connect with people and kind of tell me your experience with them. And so it was kind of fun. It was a lot of fun for myself as well as for the actors.
Now, one of the keys to this film working is the cast. You had to find a really good cast to pull this film off, and you're able to do that. Tell us a little bit about the casting and how you went about finding your actors and actresses, especially Katarina Hughes that plays Megan.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, it was more, I would say, my friend, she's a casting associate. I think she's a director now for NY Casting in New York. So she kind of helped out a lot. Well, not kind of. She actually helped out a lot. She's the one who kind of like wrangled in all these people, except for the lead. The lead, I knew her, and she's a pretty good comedic actress. And she wanted to take on this the main part of the character, and she came to me and kind of helped kind of mold the character while we were kind of developing it. So it was a combination of one. The main lead is my friend, and then the other characters got cast by my friend Angelita, who worked for NY Casting.
Awesome. So, tell us a little bit too. Were you filming this during COVID, and if so, how did those restrictions either help or hamper what you were doing on set?
I mean, it was great being it was a documentary style filmmaking, and we had a very, very, very small cast and also crew. So it was kind of like, this is before COVID, like it was during COVID, kind of before COVID, but we already had that like 6 feet distance. When we're shooting a documentary, we didn't get that close. We set up the camera, we gave people their space because we wanted to do that, and it was just me and a cameraman and the audio person. So it was really a limited amount of people in this space anyway. So we were kind of abiding by the COVID laws, the rules, before they were in place.
Awesome. Well, I guess the big question now is, where can people see The Death of April? People are going to be listening to this interview right around the world. Where can people go if they want to check out the film?
I mean, right now, Terra Films is kind of like getting it on streaming services. So pretty much it's going to terrafilms.com and finding out from their website. Because right now I know that we're going to be on Google Play, we're on Apple TV, we're on Tubi, we're on a bunch of other streaming services, but I believe there's more of them coming up. And if anybody wanted to update on it, just go to terrafilms.com and you'll get pretty much the entire list of where the film is being streamed to.
Awesome. Well, Ruben, to wrap up, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch this film?
I want them to basically enjoy the film. I want them to experience it from more of a documentary kind of sense. It isn't. I don't want people going into this film thinking it's a straight up horror film, which it isn't. It's more of a true crimes kind of film with a supernatural twist to it, where you're trying to find out what is actually happening, like what happens to the main character. And it's I believe it's for me, it's a twist at the end, but I want people to go into it knowing that it's not a Jason kind of slasher or a Paranormal Activity where there's all this jump scares all over the place. It's more about a story about a girl who is trying to figure out this situation that's happening to her, but you also find out as a viewer that there's more to it. Like, she has some kind of issues.
Yep.
And so you find this all out at the end of the film.
And it's been really difficult doing the review for this film and not mentioning that twist and giving it away, because it is such a great twist, and yeah, it's just really hard not to have been mentioning it. So, Ruben, I just want to say thank you so much for chatting to us today. Thank you so much for making a great film like this, and thank you for all the films you've made over the years as well, because you've made some really, really great films over the years.